Welcome to this rapid revision session on riots and the Kerner Report. Let's look at some background to riots in black communities in the 1960s. Despite the legal gains of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which effectively banned segregation in public spaces, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that closed many loopholes which were standing between black people and their right to vote within their states, there was little improvement in many black people's lives in many areas. For example, police brutality and discrimination. Police harassed, unjustly arrested and even shot black people. In 2.5 years before the Watts riot, 65 black people had been shot by police, 27 in the back and 25 of them unarmed. And believe me, for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to be drawn on current affairs. Discrimination from officials. City governments did nothing to respond to complaints about living conditions in many communities. Unemployment. Black people were twice as likely as white people to be unemployed in America at this time. Housing. Mostly white landlords charged high rents for low-quality, crowded housing. And poor education. Despite desegregation, schools in majority black areas were run down and often underfunded. All of this led to a situation where there was a lot of anger and frustration in many black communities. But often it took a different spark to set off discontent and turn it into a riot. Bad living conditions, hot and unsanitary summers, which often led to very unpleasant and smelly living conditions, and often a key trigger event, usually with the police, led to riots. There were 329 major riots between 1964 and 1968. If you do the maths there, that's almost one every 4 days. They left 220 people dead, over 8,000 injured, and over 52,000 people arrested. The main ones were Watts in LA in August of 1965, Chicago in 1966, Cleveland in 1966, Newark in 1967, Detroit in 1967. Note that many of these are not in the Deep South. That means that actually this was a problem across the United States. Much of the civil rights topics that we've been looking at have been concerned with the Deep South and segregation and so forth, but this actually shows that civil rights as a living conditions issue was something that was fairly nationwide at this time. So what could be done about it? Well, first of all, the government needed to acknowledge that there was a problem, and once they'd acknowledged that, perhaps something could be done to fix it. This is where the Kerner Report comes in. President Johnson ordered a report into the riots. These were the main findings of the Kerner Report, which was released in 1968. Riots were caused by ghetto conditions produced by segregation and discrimination. White officials failed to listen to black communities or fix their problems. Police needed to protect those in ghettos instead of victimizing them. And police tactics often made riots worse, and federal money was being spent on the police, not fixing the ghettos and the conditions leading to rioting. They also pointed out that, in their view, the media made things worse by exaggerating and sensationalizing reports in order to get viewing figures and to sell newspapers. Some of these issues might seem familiar in today's world as well. However, what's important about the Kerner Report is not so much what it changed, but what it highlighted in an official capacity, something that hadn't really been done before. So let's have a look at some final points and get an idea of any outcomes from this. There were a series of riots in urban, predominantly black communities in the mid to late 1960s. I've listed some of these earlier in the video, and if you want to have a look at any in particular, I suggest that you revise them yourselves. But first of all, just for the purposes of rapid revision, that will do. These were not restricted to the Deep South, showing that racial discrimination was actually a problem all over the country. There were many social and economic causes to the riots, usually with a trigger event, often involving the police, which set things off. The Kerner Report of 1968 stated many things that seemed to be obvious. However, it is an important official acknowledgement of the issues that black communities faced, even if on its own it didn't fix them. And that's one of the really main points here. It might be obvious that ghetto conditions and injustice were causing anger and that discrimination might itself lead to riots. But what is less obvious is that the government always accepts that. By accepting that, actually on paper, in a published report, shows that the government is aware, and it puts pressure on the government to change things. That's the end of this rapid revision session. I hope it's been useful to you. If it has, please like the video and subscribe for more of the same. But for now, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.